Hello, welcome back to my MMA betting predictions channel. We're going to be talking about UFC 266 today. I'm very big on this card. I really like the fights that they're giving us, although we've had some last minute changes and cancellations and issues. For the most part, nothing too major. And we should still be expecting to have a great night. Like, this is one of those cards. We have sometimes where I'll tell you a card is just not meant for parlays, and that you should be using mostly single bets and prop bets or no more than two leg parlays. But this is a card, I don't know if it's because, they got a big name like Nick Diaz back in action or whatever it is, but they went all out on this card, and they've given us a more than a handful of fighters who I've just along the years developed a lot of knowledge and experience in studying and researching and learning about them, the things that I need to know that's important when it comes to betting. Like, are they trustworthy, dependable? Are they the type that lacks confidence or can get emotionally, attached to some or mentally exhausted through like mental warfare? Could their opponents get into their heads easily, or are they calm, cool, and when it comes time to fight, nothing's gonna distract them and they can leave all that, be at the door and be the fighter that they need to be? So I know all these fighters very well. So I personally feel like this is a card where I can parlay the whole card. I can give you 10 fights in a parlay, and I don't see none of them possibly not even cashing in. So when I feel like that, those are the events we usually hit. My Hail Mary parlays, my 6-leggers, 5-leggers, 4-leggers. So like my system, the reason it's bulletproof is because I have a combination. So for example, I start off with like a column A is typically my safest parlays. And column A being the safest, not just with the safest picks, but also being a section that doesn't have majorly big or too big of a parlay or too many big parlays in it. So it mostly consists of like 2-leggers, no more than 3-leggers. And that column A is where we disperse the majority of our money. Typically about 50 to 60% of our total bankroll, our total funds used, goes towards that column. But it evens out because in the other column, like section B and section C, even though we're using a smaller percentage, a smaller piece of the pie, the odds are so much better that if I get all of them right in column A and all of them right in column B, which has happened a lot, even though I used more money in column A and it generated me more than double my money back, so that even if the rest of the columns don't work out, let's imagine none of them cashed in, which is nearly impossible, hardly has ever happened before. It's close to impossible. But let's just say, even if that were the case, column A ensures us, it protects us, it even ensures that we make some profit still. But what I was trying to say is column B and C's profits are just as much, if not more, than column A's profits, because we may have not used as much money, but the odds are way better, twice as good, 3 times as good sometimes, as the parlays in column A. So it's very sophisticated, it's very advanced, it's set up in a way that it's very, very difficult or near impossible for us not to generate profits. as long as I do my research, my due diligence, and I'm the kind of guy who gets more right than wrong, and everybody knows, even on Dana White Contender Series, especially Bellator or PFL, I've not only never got more wrong than right, I'd never get more than like 2 wrong, and then one of them is typically like a robbery or a freak accident. So that's why we've had it like I do currently have a folder called Perfect Cards, where you'll see 10 out of 10, 12 out of 12, 11 out of 11, 9 out of 9, or 9 out of 10. Sometimes I'll add like the folders that there was only 1 wrong and everybody knew it was like one of those robberies, like the Miranda Maverick fight. I added that into the Perfect Cards because that was the only one wrong and the whole world knew she won the fight. So why would I count it against my Perfect Card folder? So I added things like that and everybody would understand. But other than that, but point back is this is a card that I'm very comfortable in saying I can make some great parlays out of it. And there's a lot of mismatches, but due to recency bias, due to one fighter being a household name, a UFC stable of the division, someone that's we've heard of time after time and seen in the UFC for a while, against someone who we've never heard of. Like, do you remember when Manon, who was supposed to be on this card, Manon Furia, the French girl, she made her debut fight? I made a video. It's still out till today. You can type it in my older videos, type in Manon or her debut, or just look back at the debut fight she had. She was like a plus 150 underdog. And the video, I said these odd makers completely messed this one up. Not only should she not be the underdog, she should be a pretty big sized favorite. And she annihilated her competition. Same thing with Jocelyn Edwards. She opened up on her debut fight as a underdog. I made a video. It's still there. I made posts that are still in my Patreon. You can search manually for them. That said Jocelyn Edwards should not be the underdog, should be the favorite. And she went ahead and in plus money won the fight. So it's common that this happens, and it's the same thing with this fight. Euros Medic is who we're going to talk about more today. His nickname is I think he goes by one of his nicknames that not many know about. Like I noticed, Sherdog Tapology, they don't even mention it. They give one of his other nicknames that's not so common. They call him, they say that he goes by the nickname The Doctor, but inside the gym and like amongst his friends, they usually call him the Serbian Samurai. So that's the more better suitable nickname he would be known by. But look, I've studied both of these guys for a long time. I know Jalen Turner's fights. I've studied all of his fights from the regional scene to his UFC wins and losses. And if, you know, and I have a lot of good things that I could say about both of them, but I have much more good things I can say about Euros. Euros Medic is, you know, one of these guys, Euros, he's the one that's going to have the way better fighter IQ. He's the guy who brings more of the dog out of him inside the fight, and that has a lot to do with like confidence. Like when you're the kind of guy who's confident with your durability, you're not going to be fragile or easily taken down or easily knocked down or hurt, and when you're not afraid, it allows you to be more aggressive. And being aggressive means you're the guy pushing forward, you're the guy controlling the ring or the octagon, and being the aggressor, being the forward pressure fighter, it's not just going to look good on the judges' scorecards. It's going to help you have an advantage, an edge over your competition, your opponent, in a sense. So, and this is a guy who we have to remember when we're comparing technicalities, like technical skills for technical skills. He's the better, more technical fighter. He's the kind of guy who opens, creates, openings by setting up combinations, or he reminds me a lot of like a Cody Stamen, I'm sorry, a Corey Sandhagen, the Sandman. Very good precision striking, very, like, everything he throws lands just perfect where it's supposed to land, and it makes him look like he's this like big powerful guy that has like Mike Tyson like power, because when it connects they drop, and some of them don't get back up and the fights are over, or they're just so hurt that they don't even bother fighting back. Like Alien Cruz was covering up. That fight literally could have been stopped a minute earlier, and the commentators were screaming, "Stop the fight. This should not be going on anymore." But he was covering up. He wasn't even bothering to try to fight back, because he knew that once he stopped covering himself up, the second that Euros found the opening, whether it was gonna be in a moment where he was also gonna have to put himself in danger, which is a risk he's willing to take. He's willing to take a shot to give a shot, because he trusts in his shot being the more devastating, harder shot, more precise striking. This is a guy who I've studied. I've watched him like talk from when he's around his family, his friends, in between fighting camps, during his fighting camps, at home, before he flies out to like Vegas or wherever he's going to fight. He eats, sleeps, and lives fighting. That's his life. That's his only thing. Like recently we even saw him asking the current champ Alexander Volkanovski if he can touch and hold the belt and get a feel. The last person I remember who did that before they were champion was Israel Adesanya, Conor McGregor, all those greats. They wanted to see the belt almost as if they needed to envision and feel it and to know if it felt right. It's almost like when the fighter goes inside the octagon before the fight starts, just to get the feel of the octagon, just to see how they feel in there. And that's a big advantage for when you're about to start the fight, or it just gives you that extra confidence and boost. Okay, but besides that, like, we're not just technical striking versus technical striking. We got to give the advantage to Euros. But, the guy who's going to be the more aggressive, walking him forward, instead of like when we seen Jalen Turner fight. Like, let's think about all of Jalen Turner's losses. Well, Euros is undefeated, so you can't compare any of his losses to any similarities that Jalen has, because Euros is still undefeated. But if we look back at literally every single one of Jalen Turner's losses, those fighters are the exact same fighter and fighting style and characteristics that Euros Medic has. Vicente Luque, you can hit him with a bat and he's still going to be coming forward. He pressures, cuts you off, and is willing to take a shot to give a shot. I just finished explaining that that's the kind of fighter you're going to deal with when you fight Euros, right? Nobody in Jalen Turner's career has ever made him look so bad. The fight before that, who was it? Before that, Jalen Turner's other loss was against, who was it? 1 second, guys. Sorry for the delay. Oh, perfect. Hold on. Okay, Matt Frevola. What do we know about Matt Frevola? This is a guy who never takes a step back. You can hit him with anything you got, everything you got, and he's still coming forward. He's still going to pressure you. He's still going to be in your face trying to fight, bring the fight to you. That's another guy he lost to and he had a lot of trouble with. So what history has told us is against this type of a style fighter, someone who's aggressive, doesn't take backward steps, always goes forward, isn't afraid of taking a shot, and this time has precision like none other. Like, that's why I compared him to Corey Sandhagen. Corey timed, it took, 10 seconds and one single strike, one flying knee. Yuri Proktovich, the guy who's next in line to be fighting against the winner of Jan Blachowicz and Glover Teixeira, throws like 12 flying knees in all of his fights. He probably throws like 10 in each, and in every fight has probably never even landed one. They're difficult. You have to time them. Everything's got to be perfect, especially if you're going to get a knockout. This guy did it in just one strike, one attempt. So that's how we've seen the same type of accuracy. His accuracy, he lands at a percentage that is almost unheard of. Like in his last fight, if you look at the stats just from his last fight, they gave him about 20 strikes landed per minute and like 1 or 2 absorbed. 20, I've never seen that differential in any single fight. So he's very unique. He's special in a lot of different ways. And how could you not beat? He trains with guys like Martin Vettori, helps him wrestle. Beneil Dariush, I got tons of pictures of him and Beneil Dariush training together. Beneil Dariush is on a 7 or 8 fight win streak, all finishes. Speaking of all finishes, Euros not just undefeated, but 7 wins, all by finish. He's got 100% finish rate, 6 of them early in the first round, and the only one that wasn't in the first round came in less than a minute of the second round. So it came as close to the first round as possible also. So doesn't waste time. It doesn't mean he doesn't have the ability. He does. This is a guy who sleeps, eats, and breathes fighting. He trains full time. He moved away from Alaska to go to train with the best fighters. His coach, Rafael Cordero, is one of the best, not one, in my opinion, and I've said this before, he's, in my opinion, not top 3, probably the #1 best coach of all time, and not just in one aspect, not just in preparation of fighting and generating and building and molding into the best fighters, but he's got that thing that like Mickey had for that Rocky, when Rocky was trailing in those fights. I know this is a movie, but movies are always taking inspiration from things from real life. So we've seen this happen a million times. Saif Saud is very popular for doing this, but for me, nobody does it better than Rafael Cordero. If you don't believe me, go listen to the advice he gave to Martin Vettori in his Jack Hermanson fight, where Jack Hermanson came in as a 2-1 favorite almost. So opening odds were like somewhere close to that. And I don't know, I think later it moved and it flipped, but whatever. But listen to what he said to him. It made him so pumped that he didn't even, it was a 5-round barn burner. It didn't finish inside. It went all 5 rounds. It didn't slow down for 1 second of the fight. And Vettori was trying to use a wrestling game plan, so that taxes your cardio more than the regular type of way of fighting. So he was so spent, his body was so physically drained and exhausted that I believe it was just the things that he was listening to Rafael Cordero from King's MMA, the things that he was saying in between those rounds. It made me motivated. It made me want to get up and want to fight. So I know that's why he stood up he didn't sit on his stool, and he kept coming out looking better and better as the rounds progressed. We thought we were going to see him slow down and Jack the Demon, he's a 5-round demon, start to take over. Quite the opposite. Marvin was the one who surprised everybody and kept looking better and better. So he trains under Rafael Cardera. Let me remind you, Mike Tyson, when he made his return comeback for the first time to fight Roy Jones Jr., he could have picked him. He's a millionaire. He's a legend. Anybody would be, they would work for free just to have the publicity of saying that he picked me as his coach. That would be the best advertising for his gym. Who did Mike Tyson train with, and who did he go with his head coach and trainer? Rafael Cardero. So he didn't pick him for no reason. You guys got guys. He's got guys like Kevin Gastelum. I think Nasrat even trained there. Giga Chikadze. That guy is on a spree. Look what he just did to Edson Barboza. He was an underdog, and he still. Look what he did in his fights before that. Cub Swanson. And that other guy he finished in the first round that he just lost to Muniz, I think. But either way, these guys that come out of this camp are special because their work ethic, they're inspired, and they're taught techniques that are special. I know how they train. I've talked to them personally. I've had conversations with like Dariush and people from out of there. They break boundaries. Like when they get to their limits of I can't keep going, not only do they make them keep going, but they keep going twice as much. And I've been there. I've seen that. I might have even told you the story of when I first went to the gym, my first week, my trainer made me go down the stairs and up the stairs. There was exactly 100 steps, steep ones. So everybody, the trainer would tell them to do 10 sets. Going down and up would be considered 1. So it's technically 20. So he told me do 10. Go down and up, that's 1. And when you do 10 and you're done, come back and let me know. And we'll go do the next thing. My first time trying it, I did 9.5 and I was done. I couldn't go anymore. My sides were hurting. I was sweating. And that was further than most people. Most people quit. Like when I was a trainer and I was asking the new guys to do that, after 5 or 6 or 4 or 3, maybe 7 or 8 was one of the better ones. But nobody hardly ever made it to 9. And that's because I was an athlete all my life. I played football since I was in diapers. I did wrestling. I did karate. So I was in always gymnastics. I was in the best shape. And I couldn't do 10. But as I kept training daily and doing it daily, I got to the point where I did 100. That's not an exaggeration. I did 100. And when I finished my 100 sets, I wasn't even running. I wasn't sweating and I wasn't breathing heavily. So it makes you break boundaries. Just like they say, when you're lifting weights, if your maximum is 250 pounds and you only keep stopping at a 250 pound limit, if you never put that extra 5 pounds on and try to break through, you're never going to get that stronger or bigger. You're always just going to stay there. Once you break limits and boundaries, and that's what they're all about. Discipline, making them the best versions of themselves, and teaching them never give up, never back down. And when you got that type of training, that type of high level quality, technical, advanced level training with a mixture of a guy like this, let me tell you something about Serbians. Okay, this guy's Serbian. I'm not stereotypical, but it's not a coincidence that in total, I fought about 7, maybe 6 it was, but about at least 6 or 7 Serbians in my days. Every single one of them that I beat, every time I knocked that guy down or when he was about to lose, there wasn't a second in his eyes where he was afraid or he quit. They kept getting right back up and coming right back at me as if they believed. It was different. It's not like that guy. I've seen it happen with people who are embarrassed, who felt humiliated or angry. These guys believed that, you know what, I'm going to go get him, and this time I'm going to kick his ass. So this time I'm going to drop him to the ground or punt or knock him out. So these guys, they don't stop coming. You gotta, I said the same thing about mine, you gotta put her to sleep. And we saw her went the whole 3 rounds. She didn't give up. Some people, they're born with a heart. They're built good for fighting. And that's why they call him the Serbian samurai. I assume that's where he got his name from. He's probably got beaten up in the gym so many times, and they could see that he was never discouraged. Sometimes even Jorge Masvidal, he said this in interviews. He's like, I've had days where I got beat up in the gym so bad, I didn't want to go back the next day. That's the opposite. These are the guys that when they get beat up, they want to come back and spend twice the amount of time than they did the day before. And that's a great mentality. Your state of mind, your mental state is one of the most important things you need to have strong. You need to build it and keep it strong. That's why when you start to get beat, like for example, the Tyrone Woodley syndrome or whatever, when you start losing after fight, losing, once you lose your confidence and you start to think about yourself as a loser, as someone who can't win anymore, you naturally start to look like that person. But if you think like, you know what, that guy got lucky, or I was having a bad day, or I'm just going to get better and come back and do better, win, lose, or draw, we're going to see a better version of that person. And that's what this guy is. So he's got the makings of what it takes. And that's why he's never tasted defeat yet. He's got the mentality. He puts the time in. He's got the ethics. He's got the good people around him, people who are next in line. Things could be a lot different. Let's not forget Charlie Oliveira, the Bronx Oliveira, after signing a bout agreement to fight against Beneil Dariush with no explanation, no reason, no COVID protocols, no injuries, canceled and backed out of their contract and took a different fight with a fighter like Ferguson, who's got a bigger name, who Tony ended up beating who Beneil beat also later on. But they both had the same amount of win streak. So it wasn't like Tony was Beneil was on a 2-fight win streak. They were both on like a 5 or 6 fight win streak, Charles and Beneil. The only difference is Beneil was finishing those opponents all in the first round in impressive fashion. 2 of those finishes were voted knockout. 2 years in a row, he got knockout of the year. The one that was the spinning first round elbow, it was like a spinning, it looked like a forearm, but it might have been an elbow. It was like a spinning forearm first round knockout against Scott Holtzman. The other one was, Drew, I think it was, not Drew Dober. It was the other guy. He was also on a big win streak, and we've seen him recently come back and do well. I always confuse his name with Drew Dober, but it's not. It was voted the best comeback fight of the year, where he looked like he was getting in a lot of trouble, and they got into like a back and forth like scrap, and he wobbled Beneil, but instead of Beneil giving up, balling up, covering up, he responded back with his own punches. And that response of not giving up and coming back with his own flurry, his own punches and strikes back, got him not just stay out of, losing the fight and getting TKO'd, but it got him the TKO win instead. He ended up going on and beating his opponent. What's his opponent's name, man? It's the guy who Jeremy Stevens just pushed, and they had to cancel the fight because in the face-offs, he got injured. I'll tell you who his name is right now. All right, so yeah, but he did also beat Drew Dober, who was on a 5-fight win streak. Beneil snapped his win streak in a second round finish armbar submission. Let me remind you. He finished Thiago Moises, or no, he went to decision with Moises. He finished Frank Camacho first round. He finished Drakkar Klose. He finished him pretty early, pretty quickly on in the first round. He was able to put away Drakkar Klose, who was looking his best, like in his prime, unstoppable. He was on a crazy, like, he should have been known as the win streak killer. Like, he went on a spree where anybody holds, what's his name that he won twice against? Diego Ferreira, crazy win streak. I think he had won every fight except in his whole career. His first and only loss was to Beneil way back. Then to the guy who's going to be the current champion, if it's not, who's fighting at least against the current champion, Dustin Poirier. Besides Dustin Poirier and Beneil, nobody ever beat Diego. So in their rematch fight, he dominated Beneil. And you know what it had a lot to do with? And he admitted in his post-fight, I listened to my coaches. I wanted to do this. I wanted to engage in the firefights and this and that. But something told me, don't do it. Listen to him. He's telling me to make it easier. Why am I making it harder? Just use my wrestling. Use my BJJ. This can be a lot easier than it needs. I can make it much easier than it is. So he listened to his coaches and he had a masterclass performance. He dominated and won all 3 rounds. Even though one of the dumb judges, I think, even gave it a split decision, which everybody was going crazy over. Like, how could they even give him 1 round, nonetheless, the entire fight? So, but, you know, Beneil still won, but we know how judges can be. But anyways, so he's coming out of that camp, fighting with those types of people. He comes from a, you know, background, the ethnicity, nationality of people who are made for fighting, who you know, these guys, they were built, at his age tells me that he was living in Serbia during the Bosnian War. If anybody knows anything about the war, during his childhood, and this happened, that's why a lot of like people came from Iraq, they're built really strong. They call Chicago Chirac because Iraq was known as like the capital of the, you know, murder capital of the world. Serbia in the 90s, like during Bill Clinton's era, was going through a very big war, a war that took a lot of people's lives, children's, women. It wasn't the type of a war that happened in the battlefields. It was one that happened in front of their home, regular people's homes. So a lot of, you know, people died protecting their families. It got so bad that even Bill Clinton had to step in, and America got involved. Actually, they even made a movie about it. It's a real good movie. If you've never seen it, you should look into it. Behind Enemy Lines. Those characters are based off of real people. If those who have seen that movie, it's with Gene Hackman, Owen Wilson, and that guy who was in like the Adidas jumpsuit. He was portraying a real like guy that was with the Serbians. He was a bad guy. He was known for killing kids, raping women, and just going to houses, and like they made it a type of a war that was just nasty, and it was devastating. The place was never the same. And I think it might have, you know, had a lot to do with religion or just land. Who knows? Like just some things that people fight about. So they came from a tough environment, a place where it wasn't safe, so that you're born tough. And I can relate. I wasn't just born in Chicago. I was born on literally the worst intersection, the worst street. The first day I came out of the hospital, the apartment that I lived in with 8 other children, and it wasn't my real parents who took care of me at that time, it was on top of a bar. that was open 7 days a week till 6 in the morning, playing loud music. People were fighting. One time the building got set on fire. All I heard was music and fighting till 6 in the morning. So like, but because it was a family of like 7 kids, we couldn't afford a better place. So it was in the worst neighborhood and the worst block, the worst street on the corner, on top of a bar. So like next across the street from a park where it was like the headquarters of one of the biggest gangs in the entire city. So like you couldn't even cross the street, or you'd have to be careful of this. You couldn't go downstairs. You'd have to be careful from the drunks. So you grew up hearing gunshots, people screaming, fighting, and you naturally became like I was never scared when I was a kid. Like when I would witness things that other kids would freak out, and it wouldn't even catch my attention. It was to that level. So you grow up tough. There was no coincidence that when I got into fighting, that aggression, that fierceness, and I quickly rose through the rankings in karate, wrestling, boxing. I became a trainer in boxing before a lot of the people even become advanced. So like I moved, especially in boxing, I progressed quickly, and they see me as a natural talent for that sport. But anyway, back on track. So this guy comes from similar types of background, and his people are very similar type of a history. So he's a tough guy. You could tell it. You could see it. He's got great fight IQ. He's very calm. His shot selection is there. He doesn't panic. Like the things that we've seen, the mistakes that we've seen in Jalen Turner's game. If you look at the Vicente Luque fight and Turner fight, and you see some of the, and I'll tell you why. It's not just from not being, Jalen Turner is the type of a fighter. It's very important. It's super necessary that he hears instructions from his corner during the fight. If he doesn't hear his corner telling him step-by-step instructions, which two things about that. One, when you're fighting with an audience in a crowd during the post-pandemic era, it might have been okay, but now that we're going back to crowds, that's not going to be so easy. And then if you can hear them, so can your opponent. So he'll be a step ahead as well. But the other problem is you can't make sudden, quick. Sometimes there's only a 1 second window of making this move or that could make the difference of whether you're going to win the position, win the fight, land the big shots, take advantage of winning the positions, or whatever it is. So time is important. So if you're relying on your coach, and he's even admitted, if you look back at some of his wins in the regional scene, especially, he's got to say, I owe everything to my corner. He starts naming all the people, and you can hear them step by step. And then when you don't hear them, this is a guy who had, like, in one of his fights, he had like a 7 or 8, and he's very tall for the division. And when he fought at a smaller class, at one point, because he was up and down in weight classes, he had such a large advantage on the feet, and he was doing so well on the feet that even with all the success he was having on the feet, he didn't know any better than to close the distance against the guy who's a primarily wrestler, who likes to try to take people to the ground, doesn't have stand-up striking skills, and his reach disadvantage was drastic. And the only person who kept initiating the clinch and closing the distance to allow him to take him to the ground, trip him, stay on top of him for moments at a time was Jalen. Jalen did that over and over and over. And it was in one of those fights where maybe he just wasn't getting the clear instructions. So it's hard to depend and trust a person like that, as opposed to a guy who's just naturally good and knows what he's doing and doesn't need his corner to know how to win fights as much as just regular corner stuff. Ice me, water bucket, rub the back, like just the basics. He doesn't need them to win the fights. That's the difference. So that's another major comparison that we can make. So yeah, he's fought against a lot of guys. And Jalen Turner, again, one of the worst people I've ever seen. If you remember, I said this about Hooker. I said, yeah, Hooker, when I picked Chandler, he was a big underdog against Hooker. And I told you that his punches were perfect. He was swung with his hips. He pivoted, he twisted, his legs twisted. He did it perfectly. He threw punch better than I've seen anybody throw a punch. Perfect punches. And Hooker is a guy who's very bad at using his length. He makes the fights dirty. He does a lot of dirty body. He doesn't know how to keep people at range and at the end of his punches. So that's why we picked Chandler to win. I didn't think it was going to happen that fast, but I knew that was the result, and that's why we picked the underdog, a big underdog, to win that fight. So there's a lot of little things that you got to pay attention to. If you're not a fighter, if you're not a trainer, don't try this at home. I noticed there's a lot of fights on this card that people are going all in on the guy who should be the underdog only because he's the favorite. There's a lot of people on this card who are slight favorites, some even bigger favorites, that should not even be the favorites. And so a lot of people are going to be doing bad on this card. If there was ever a card you're going to be interested in joining my Patreon, so you can see, not only will I give you a list from, if there's 12 fights, I make number 1 through 12 a list in order of my most confident, my most safe, to my least safe picks. So like last week we had Phil Davis in Bellator. I put Phil Davis was one of my more dangerous picks, and it went to split decision, but he won. He beat Yoel Romero. But Alex Polizzi is a guy who I said he was like mid-level risk. He wasn't going to win easily, but it wasn't going to be like I said that he should win. He was a plus 180 underdog. He cashed in for us. Or on the Dana White Contender Series, guys like Lowton and everybody, if you look, their locks and their parlays had that guy Volka because he was a minus 200 favorite. But Michael Morales was a plus 200 underdog. If you got him early enough, later it becomes like a 1-8 plus 170 plus 180 underdog. But I gave a full page explanation. I gave a literally 3 paragraphs long on the reasons why Michael Morales should not been the underdog, should been the favorite, and how he was going to win and why he was going to win. I noted his advantages, the guy's disadvantages, the obstacles, the things that only if you do your due diligence and research, probably a lot of people didn't know. I never seen or heard anybody talk about this, but his opponent, who was the Vikale, whatever his name was, that was the minus 200 favorite in the main event of last week. He had a long layoff due to a brain injury. He had time off, and when he came back, the first fight he had from that injury that he came off of, that was a serious injury, he looked worse than he's ever looked in his career. After the first round, his cardio was shot, and he didn't even have a hard pace or a fast-paced first round. So I knew without a question in my mind that he should not have been the favorite, especially not that big of a favorite. So I made a post just like I've done with Jason Witz and so many others. And, if you look in my underdog folder, my underdog picks alone, I have over a 90% accuracy rate. So just off of that, you're going to make your small once a month membership, and there's no long-term obligations. You're not paying for like a full year. You're not stuck there. If you try it for a month, you don't like it, not only can you cancel, but I offer money back guarantees for anybody who doesn't make profit after the first 30 days. That's how confident I am in my system, that it's not a matter of if we win, it's a matter of just how much are we gonna win. All right, so a lot of perks. I give prop bets, which are called my most likely outcomes. So I don't go off, like you'll notice, this is how you can tell odd makers are not people who used to fight or trainers or some real fight type of a people. They put things, most of the time you're going to notice the minus 300, minus 400 prop bets never cash in. But like if you look at my one example, the Holland and Brunson card, I got 12 prop bets, all 12 cashed in. 3 of them were over, no, one of them was over plus 300. 2 of them were over plus 500. One of them was over plus 600. The other ones were like plus 100, plus 200. So I always, even though I say it's the most likely outcome, the lines don't indicate that. That shows they're not, like when I picked Jacare Souza to lose by submission by Andre Munoz, that was a plus 695. You could plus 700 prop bet. Or Cochurera to beat Gina Mazzani, who was the favorite by knockout, that was plus 690. Or Fluffy to win by submission, that was plus 2,000. And these were in. So here's a breaking news I want to give you guys. What I'm going to start to do, because I've discovered something new. This is breaking news. Everybody should listen to and pay attention to, especially if you're already in the Patreon. You're going to love me for this. If you have a FanDuel account, you're going to be especially happy. If you don't, I suggest you sign up for one, because FanDuel has a section called Double Chance. It gets you, like, for example, if let's say Sean O'Malley, and every time I've ever used this, I have 100% accuracy. I've never got any of these wrong because it's too easy. It's almost too good to be true. What it does is it gives you the ability to choose 2 of the most probable ways that the winner will win. So if I pick Sean O'Malley to win, and it'll allow me, instead of paying minus 300, it gives me plus 110 odds, because I picked that he'll win by either TKO, KO, or by decision. So when he was fighting Chris Motino and he was this close to not getting the finish, I was not sweating it because I took in my parlays. So I ended up getting like plus 400 for it. That's the day I posted. I made over $2,000 in profit. My double chance prop, and only FanDuel, that as far as I know, there may be other places that offer this, but FanDuel will offer you prop bets that are called double chance, where you get to pick. So if I know a fighter never makes attempts for submissions, never had a submission win, so he either wins by knockout or by decision, instead of getting him at money line, I'll get him for the prop bet that says either by TKO, KO, or by decision. And that alone will give me so much more value. And when you do it for every fight, it adds up. And then when you're parlaying them, especially, adds up even faster. So that's going to be a new addition. I'm going to put a column called FanDuel or double chance prop bets. So that'll give you the first and second. So imagine that if this whole time I've been averaging about 80 to 90% accuracy on my prop bets. Imagine that's just using my first most likely. Imagine now that I give you my second and first most likely outcomes. That'll shoot it up to way above 95% accuracy, and allow you to, if you're using Fanduel or other sites that allow you to do that, to make even more money. So again, always thinking, even though we're winning, we're making money, I'm never not thinking of new ways to make more money. So, all right, you guys got my pick, SMITHVSSPANN. I think he's got a lot of advantages mentally, physically, experience-wise. Technically, it may go to, on paper, to Jalen, but when you learn who these people are working with and who's working with them and who's teaching them, the more well-experienced, smarter, technical, better fight IQ, stronger, better fighter is SMITHVSSPANN. And they're giving him to us at near pick'em odds, right? Last time I checked, they were almost even money. So they were like minus 110, close to. So it may have moved a little bit up or down, but it's still pretty close to that. And when you're putting him in parlays with my other tier 1 picks, because I separate tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. If you're in my Patreon, tier 1 is only my safest picks, biggest mismatches, the ones I don't expect to go to decisions, they won't get robbed, or they're just big favorites, or they should have been big favorites, are going to be under my tier 1. You can always lock those in. Maybe use my most 2 confident picks and parlay them and put more money on those, or just follow my full bet slips. My full bet slips is designed to be bulletproof, so that it's not how much you win, it's just a matter of how much you win. Last week, you saw messages from a guy who I posted. He had only been a patron for 2 months, but his first month, smart guy. He wasn't betting a lot of money. He was just betting small money. So for the first 4 or 5 weeks, he was betting a couple hundred here and there, but he started to notice, like, okay, I keep winning. I keep multiplying my money. So on his second month, he finally trusted me enough to put some big money down. Look at the comments on my social media account. Same guy. I showed the day that he signed up for my Patreon, his name, his messages. He made $73,000 in one event because of my results. The underdogs, the parlays, the list, the tiers of most confident to least confident. If you're a guy who's creative and has ways of thinking, you don't even need my bet slips. You don't even need my system. There's dozens of different ways you'll be able to creatively find ways to make money, not including the daily outside MMA. Every day I give 1 or 2 of my most confident, whether MLB, NBA, NHL, NFL. I give midweek best bets, 5-star rating opportunities to make money, to build your bankroll. So by the time the weekend is here and MMA events come back around, you have more money to use, so that money is making you money. So always going to be opportunities daily and weekly. You won't regret it. Money back guarantee and risk-free trials. So I hope to see you on the Patreon. If you get enough likes on the video, please leave a comment, hit the like and subscribe if you haven't. Most importantly, leave a comment, a nice comment, I would hope. And if we get enough comments or we get enough likes, I'll give a free prop bet or a free underdog before the event starts. All right, guys, thank you for your time. Lots of good money to be made on this card. Lots of good underdogs, so be careful. A lot of sneaky underdogs, people who should be favorites that are not favorites. So tricky card if you're not a pro, if you're not investing like me. I invest. Yesterday was media day. They had like 12 interviews. Each one was like an hour long, and in between waiting for the next fighter to come up. Sometimes there was like an hour of dead silence, and I dedicate sometimes 13 hours a day to listening to interviews, watching fight tapes, reading, researching, looking up stats, comparing. I even post comparison sheets, who's got the most better significant strikes per minute on average. Like, I put all that inside for the patrons and inside my head. So when I make my bet slips, you're always going to be, it's just a matter of how much we're going to win. And I've found ways that protect us even from when they rob us and they do bad decisions and give us bad decisions. I've developed a system and become good enough to be able to get around letting that affect us. So it doesn't affect us as much like it used to. So we're ahead of the game. Patreon's running on full cylinders. So you got nothing to lose to try it out. It becomes an extra source of income. You'll start to notice you're making more money doing this than even at your job, even if you have a good job. So what do you got to lose? Give it a shot. Hope to see you in the family, the Patreon family. You get some free merchandise when you sign up as well. And I'll introduce you to the community. We got a couple hundred people in there, sharp, like-minded MMA minds like myself. So if I ever make a mistake or if I miss something, you'll always notice somebody's in the comments or sending me a direct. Because when you sign up, 24 hours a day, me and you will have an open line of communication. Once you send me an instant message from inside the Patreon, I get notified that you sent it, and I can respond to any questions, or sometimes if somebody found out new information, they try to give it to me. So it's very helpful. It's like they always say, 2 minds are better than 1. Well, imagine how much better 200 minds are better. So we got a strong team, and I hope to see it getting stronger with you guys in it. Thank you guys for your time. Good luck. Win a lot of money. I'll be making another video before the fights start. You can start to expect, now that I'm back into one of my studios, this is temporary. Look how nice. My assistant knows nothing about fighting. They didn't even realize when they created this temporary background until my regular posters get sent to me, because I got 2 locations. One is in this part of the world. The other is like a 2-day flight, like a 30-hour flight to get to my other studio. Both of these places are equipped with the microphone, 300 megabytes per second Wi-Fi, which is necessary for uploading videos and stuff I need. And the only thing missing is the pictures. They made a picture. Little did they know, without even knowing fighters, they got Nasrat Harkiswad, they got Robbie Lawler, one of the Diaz brothers. I got the wrong one, but close enough. So A for effort. I appreciate them putting that in there for us. A nice little extra background to look at, so you don't have to see my ugly face during the whole videos. All right, guys. See you on the next one. I'll be posting another video and talking about the main event very soon. Fun fights. Don't miss it this weekend. Out of bettors' perspective and the MMA fans' perspective, both, this is a great weekend for a fight. So hope to see good news and hear good news from you guys all. And see you on the next video. Put the bell notification on, so as soon as I post it, you don't miss out on the value, because the lines move fast. So it could turn into a favorite by the time after I post it. Instead of getting underdog value, it could go into becoming a favorite, and you don't want to lose money. So it's a time sensitive matter. You always want to keep the bell reminder on. So hit the like, subscribe, the bell notification, and leave a comment. All right, guys, thanks. Good luck on your next picks. See you soon.